Okay, I'm just gonna ask you guys right off the bat, where do you think one of the first borders that we know of existed? Now, I'll give you a hint. Think about the oldest civilizations in the world and tell me your best guess down in the comments below. I'll introduce myself till then. Hi, my name is Misha and welcome to Tarihi Tales. And if you want to help support this channel, you can do so by going to my Patreon, becoming a paid member, or by becoming a paid member of this YouTube channel. And make sure to like, share, subscribe. Okay, so what a weird thing borders are, right? I mean, think about it, especially in this day and age, because majority of the boundaries that we have between countries today are just lines drawn on a piece of paper by some white men. And in some cases, very carelessly drawn lines, actually in most cases. And we take it for granted that yes, this country starts here, it ends here. We know exactly down to the last mile where what border begins and ends. But all of this is so very recent because maps are recent, and more importantly, accurate maps are very recent. For the majority of history, humankind only had like a fuzzy idea of the boundaries and borders of their nations. Nations themselves didn't exist, but you know what I mean. Now, even though maps are new, that doesn't mean borders are new, because the idea and the sense that this side of the river is ours and that side is theirs, this division has kind of always existed and people know about it, but it might not always have been documented. And that's why the border that we're going to be talking about today might not have been the first border, but that is the first border that has been documented, and that is only why we know about it. And do you know why? Like, what exactly was the documentation? Why do we know about it? Well, because some guy in 3000 BCE abolished it. So we don't know when the border was made, but we only know that there was a border because somebody abolished it. What an irony, right? So there was a guy called Menes, and he existed somewhere around 3000 BCE in the area that we now know as Egypt. And during that time, the entire area of the Nile was kind of divided in two. To the north of this border was an area called the Lower Egypt. This was a wide area of land. It was fertile, but it was prone to flooding. It was basically the delta area of the Nile. And to the south of this border lied Upper Egypt, which was higher ground. It had a much narrower strip of fertile land and a much more dense population because of that. In fact, these people were among one of the first settled populations in the world. And now this border that we're talking about, according to historians, it lied somewhere along the 30th parallel line. And even though now we call these areas Upper and Lower Egypt, but at that time, the concept of Egypt did not exist. It only came about afterwards. And at that time, these two areas were distinct areas with different cultures, different dialects, and probably different hopes and dreams, But as I mentioned, sometime around 3000 BCE, Menes, who was the ruler of Upper Egypt, which is to the south, it's been confusing me throughout my research, and he basically went up and conquered Lower Egypt, then unified this entire area and abolished the border that I'm talking about. But now the thing is that this time period that we're talking about is so old, and a lot of things because of that are a bit fuzzy now. So how old, you may be thinking, right? Let me give you like a visualization. So we've all heard of the scholar Socrates, right? An ancient Greek philosopher. Now this on the timeline is where we are. This is where Socrates is. And then this is the border. This is where this border that we're talking about existed. So we're closer to Socrates than Socrates was to that border. So it's a long time ago. And because of that, some things are kind of lost to history and archaeology. And the funny thing is, this guy Menes that we're talking about, the king, he is kind of known by different names, and sometimes people aren't even sure that he existed. But then there are other names that he's known by, which we definitely know were real people and existed. The 3rd century BCE Egyptian historians called this guy Menes. The 5th century Greek historian Herodotus referred to him as Min. And now two native king lists of the 13th century BCE call this guy Meni. And modern scholars are kind of divided about who this guy is. But a lot of them identify this guy with some other legendary kings whose names were Scorpion, Narmer, and Aha. And the thing is, it's not really, it's bound to be confusing because the Egyptian rulers at that time had more than one names. So it's very possible that all of these are the same guy. But there's a bit of a confusion. And we definitely know that this guy called Narmar, because there's an archaeological piece called the Palette of Narmar, which shows on one side we see the king Narmar wearing a tall white crown of the Upper Egypt side and also casually killing a foe. And on the other side, we see him wearing the more leveled red crown of the Lower Egypt. And this became like a trend in Egypt for centuries to come, and rulers would call themselves things like the Uniter of Two Nations, and they would give themselves these representative names like of the sedge and the bee, which were basically symbols representing Upper and Lower Egypt. So there you go, that is the story of the first ever border that we know of, and that is also how Egypt was kind of unified for the first time. Let me know what you guys think, and I will see you guys next time.